Snow stung the air as Boston's Christmas market shimmered with strings of golden lights. Families strolled arm in arm beneath garlands of evergreen. Children tugged at mittened hands. A carousel spun against the dark winter sky, its painted horses rising and falling to the tinkling melody of an old carol. But in the shadow of this festive glow, a different scene unfolded. Andrew Morgan stood alone, a solitary figure, amid the crowd's warmth and laughter. At 52, he wore success like a tailored coat, his silver-streaked dark hair precisely cut, his posture straight and unyielding. As CEO of Preston Financial, he commanded respect in boardrooms across the country. His wealth had purchased the finest things, the penthouse overlooking the harbor, the art collection, the private jet. Yet tonight, his eyes held only emptiness as they swept across the families, celebrating around him. Christmas had once meant something different, before the accident. Before the night 4 years ago, when a drunk driver had taken Elena and Sophie from him, leaving him the sole survivor of a crash that had destroyed everything that mattered. Now the holiday was merely an annual reminder of what he had lost each twinkling light, and cheerful song, another small wound, reopened. He had meant to return to his penthouse after a short obligatory walk. There were reports waiting on his desk acquisitions to review before tomorrow's meeting. The markets never stopped even when the world dressed itself in tinsel and pretended that peace on earth was possible. Andrew had learned that lesson too well. The sound cut through the market's cheerful din like a blade. A sharp crack followed by a small whimper. Andrew turned his body tensing at something in that sound that spoke of danger. Behind a mulled wine stall, partially hidden from the main thoroughfare, a woman stood over a small girl. The woman's hand was raised poised to strike again. The child cowered against the brick wall, her small body trembling. A tattered rabbit plush lay in a puddle at her feet. "You worthless little brat!" the woman hissed. Her voice slurred, but her eyes sharp with malice. "Pick it up! Now! You ruin everything." The girl couldn't have been more than 7. Her coat was thin, inadequate against the December cold. Her sneakers were soaked through with slush. Even from where he stood, Andrew could see the marks on her arms, bruises that the winter chill couldn't hide. People walked past. Some glanced over, then quickly away, their expressions troubled, but unwilling to intervene. A couple whispered to each other, shaking their heads as they hurried their own children past the scene. No one stopped. Andrew had nearly become one of them. For a heartbeat, he had almost continued on his way, allowing the moment to become just another ugliness, in a world already too full of them. Then the little girl looked up, and her eyes met his across the crowd. Those eyes, dark and wounded and somehow familiar. They held the same pain he saw in the mirror each morning. His feet moved before his mind had time to consider carrying him through the crowd until he stood between them, his back straight, his voice emerging with a strength that surprised even him. "That's enough." The woman blinked, startled by his sudden appearance. She was in her 40s, expensively dressed with carefully applied makeup that couldn't quite hide the hardness in her features. Her breath reeked of alcohol, but her eyes were calculating despite her slurred speech. "Mind your business," she snapped, recovering quickly. "She's my niece. She's being disciplined." Andrew didn't move. "That's not discipline." The woman's eyes narrowed, sweeping over his tailored coat, his Italian leather shoes, assessing his worth and his weakness in one practiced glance. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," she said, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "This child is mine. You'll regret interfering." She took a step toward the girl, but Andrew shifted, placing himself more firmly between them. The market continued around them, Christmas music playing, people laughing, all oblivious to the battle of wills unfolding in their midst. "Walk away," Andrew said quietly. "Now." Something in his tone, the absolute certainty of it, made the woman hesitate. She glanced around, noting the few bystanders who had finally stopped to watch. Her face transformed a mask of concern, sliding expertly into place. "Fine," she said, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. "Lily, darling, we'll discuss your behavior at home. Come along now." The girl Lily pressed herself harder against the wall, her small chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow breaths. She didn't speak, didn't move her gaze, fixed on her fallen rabbit, as if it were a lifeline she couldn't bear to abandon. The woman's facade cracked. "Now, Lily," she hissed. "She's staying with me," Andrew said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "I'm calling the authorities." The woman's face twisted with fury, but she controlled it quickly, smoothing her features into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You have no idea what you're doing. She's mine. I'll be back." She spat the words at him, then turned and disappeared into the crowd, her shadow swallowed by the night. Silence rushed in after her, broken only by the distant jingle of bells and the hum of Christmas music. Andrew turned back to the girl. She hadn't moved. She pressed herself against the wall, her gaze darting between him and the crowd, waiting for a blow that wouldn't come. Andrew lowered himself slowly to her level, careful not to make any sudden movements. His voice softened, losing the edge it had carried moments earlier. "Hello there," he said. "You're safe now." Lily shook her head quickly, her lips blue from the cold. She didn't speak, only glanced toward where the woman had disappeared, her body tense with the expectation of her return. Andrew followed her gaze, then looked back at the child. "She's gone. She won't hurt you anymore." He reached down slowly and picked up the soaked rabbit plush, gently wringing out some of the water before offering it to her. Lily's eyes widened at the gesture. Her small hand darted out to take the toy, then retreated back against her chest, clutching it tightly despite its dampness. "My name is Andrew," he said. "What's yours?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Lily, Lily." He repeated the name, somehow fitting the small, fragile child before him. "That's a beautiful name." She didn't respond, her attention still fixed on the crowd behind him, searching for her tormentor. "Are you cold, Lily?" he asked, already shrugging off his coat. "Here." He held it open, a silent offering of warmth and protection. Lily stared at it, suspicion warring with desperation in her expression. "Please don't send me back to her," she whispered, finally, her voice so small he almost didn't hear it over the market's noise. The words hit him harder than the December wind ever could. They carried fear, yes, but also a fragile hope that someone might finally keep her safe. "I promise," he said, his throat suddenly tight. "You're safe with me?" Slowly, cautiously, Lily took a step forward, allowing Andrew to drape the coat over her shoulders. The garment swallowed her, the sleeves hanging well past her fingertips, but she clutched it around herself, her body seeming to relax slightly at its weight and warmth. Andrew stood surveying the market. He needed to get her somewhere safe, somewhere warm, and then figure out what to do next. He extended his hand, palm up, a question rather than a demand. "Would you like some hot chocolate while we sort this out?" he asked. Lily looked at his hand for a long moment. Then, with a hesitation that broke something inside him, she placed her small fingers into his palm. For the first time in years, Andrew wasn't walking through Christmas alone. And though he had no idea what waited beyond that night, he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he would not leave her. Not tonight. Not ever. The penthouse overlooked Boston's skyline, its tall windows framing the city, dressed in Christmas lights. Inside, however, the space felt more like a museum than a home. The floors gleamed, the shelves were lined with books, no one opened, and the only sound came from the faint hum of the heating system. Andrew Morgan pushed open the door and guided Lily inside. She froze just past the threshold, her small frame stiff with apprehension, as if afraid to disturb the perfect order of the space around her. Her soaked sneakers had been left in the hallway, and now she stood barefoot on the hardwood floor, still wrapped in his oversized coat. "Come in," he said softly, trying not to crowd her. "You're safe here." Lily didn't answer. Her eyes roamed the room, taking in the minimalist furniture, the abstract paintings on the walls, the absence of photographs or personal mementos. She clutched her damp rabbit against her chest, its worn fur leaving a wet spot on Andrew's coat. He moved into the kitchen, his hands finding the routine of small human things. A saucepan on the stove, milk-warming cocoa powder, stirred carefully. He found marshmallows in the cabinet, something his housekeeper always stocked, despite his never using them. When he returned to the living room, Lily had settled herself on the very edge of the couch, her posture, rigid eyes still darting around the room, as if expecting someone to appear and punish her for being there. "Hot chocolate," he said, setting the mug on the coffee table in front of her. "Extra marshmallows." Lily stared at the mug, then at him, her expression wary. "It's okay," he assured her. "It's for you." Slowly, she reached out and wrapped her small hands around the mug, the warmth visibly relaxing her tense fingers. She took a tiny sip, then another, her eyes never leaving Andrew as he settled into an armchair across from her. "Lily," he said after she'd had a moment to warm up, "can you tell me who that woman was?" Lily lowered the mug, her knuckles whitening as her grip tightened. "Aunt Rebecca," she whispered. "Your aunt," Andrew asked gently. Lily's eyes dropped to the floor. "She's not really my aunt," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "She was Mom's friend. She made me call her that after Mom died." Andrew felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter night. "When did your mom die, Lily?" 2 years ago." A tear slipped down her cheek, but she wiped it away quickly, as if showing emotion was dangerous. "She got sick." "And you've been with Rebecca since then?" Lily nodded, her fingers working nervously at the hem of Andrew's coat. "She said no one else wanted me. She said she was doing me a favor." Her voice broke on the last word, exposing the lie she'd been told so many times she'd almost come to believe it. Andrew's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice gentle. "That's not true, Lily. Not wanting you would be like not wanting sunshine." She looked up, then genuine surprise in her expression, as if the concept of being wanted was entirely foreign to her. "Where is your father?" he asked. "I never had one," she said simply. "Mom said he left before I was born." Andrew nodded, processing this information. A child with no parents in the care of a woman who clearly saw her as a burden rather than a blessing. The legal implications were already running through his mind, but first, he needed to ensure her immediate safety and comfort. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Lily hesitated, then gave a small nod, the admission seeming to cost her something. "I'm not much of a cook," Andrew confessed, "but I can manage a sandwich. Would you like that?" Another nod, slightly less hesitant this time. In the kitchen, Andrew moved with a purpose he hadn't felt in years, assembling turkey and cheese on bread, cutting the crusts off instinctively the way he used to for Sophie. The memory caught him off guard, a sharp pang beneath his ribs. He paused, hands flat on the counter, breathing through it, as he always did when the past ambushed him. When he returned to the living room, Lily had finished her hot chocolate. She took the plate with a whispered "thank you" and began to eat in small, measured bites, as if afraid the food might be taken away at any moment. Andrew watched her anger building in his chest at what this child had clearly endured. No child should eat with such caution, should wear fear, like a second skin should flinch at every sudden movement. "Lily," he said when she had finished, "I need to make a phone call. It's to someone who can help us make sure you stay safe. Is that okay?" Lily set the plate down carefully. "Are you calling the police?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Not yet," Andrew said. "First, I'm calling a friend who knows about these things. Her name is Alexandra." Lily considered this, then asked in a small voice, "Will she make me go back to Aunt Rebecca?" "No," Andrew said firmly. "No one is going to make you go back there. I promise." He moved to the study, leaving the door ajar so Lily could see him but not overhear the entire conversation. Alexandra Foster had been his lawyer for 15 years, handling everything from business acquisitions to his personal affairs after the accident. If anyone would know what to do, it would be her. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp despite the late hour. "Andrew, is everything all right? I need your help," he said without preamble. "It's about a child." There was a brief silence on the line. "That's not a sentence I expected from you," Alexandra said finally. "Tell me everything." He did, laying out the scene at the Christmas market, Rebecca's behavior, the visible signs of abuse, Lily's current situation sitting in his living room. When he finished, Alexandra sighed. "You've stepped into complicated territory, Andrew. Legally, you can't just take a child even from an abusive situation. There are procedures." "She was being hurt," Andrew said, his voice hard. "I wasn't going to leave her there." "I'm not saying you were wrong," Alexandra said quickly. "You did the right thing morally, but we need to address this properly, or you could be accused of kidnapping." The word sent a chill through him. "What do I need to do?" "We need to report this to Child Protective Services immediately. Within 24 hours, or you could face serious legal consequences. We'll need to document any visible injuries, get a medical examination, and file for emergency temporary custody. How quickly can we move on this?" "I'll start making calls tonight," Alexandra promised. "But Andrew, you need to understand something. Even if this woman isn't Lily's blood relative, she may have legal guardianship. This won't be simple." Andrew looked through the doorway to where Lily sat still perched on the edge of the couch, still clutching her rabbit as if it were the only constant in her world. "I don't care how complicated it is. That child is not going back to someone who hurts her." "Then we'll need to build a case," Alexandra said. "I'll be there first thing in the morning. Keep her safe tonight, document any injuries you can see, and don't let her leave your sight. This Rebecca woman could cause problems." After ending the call, Andrew returned to the living room. Lily had curled into herself, her small body nearly disappearing inside his coat, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Time for some rest," he said gently. "I have a guest room you can use." He led her down the hallway to the rarely used bedroom, switching on the light to reveal a queen-size bed with crisp white linens, a dresser, and a bedside table with a reading lamp. It was impersonal, designed for visitors who never came. Lily stopped at the threshold, her body suddenly tense. "I don't deserve beds," she whispered. Andrew felt the words like a physical blow. He knelt to her level, his voice careful, gentle. "Lily, you deserve warmth. You deserve a bed, food, safety. All of it. You didn't do anything wrong." She shook her head, her eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. "Aunt Rebecca says I'm worthless, that I'm a burden, that no one wants me." "Rebecca is wrong," Andrew said firmly. "Very wrong." Lily studied his face, searching for deception. Finding none, she whispered, "Can I sleep on the floor? Just for tonight?" Andrew wanted to insist to carry her to the bed himself, but he remembered the fear in her voice outside the market. Sometimes kindness wasn't about insisting. It was about letting someone choose what felt safe. "If that's what you need tonight," he said finally, "but I'll bring you blankets and pillows to make it comfortable." He gathered every spare blanket in the penthouse, creating a nest of softness on the floor beside the bed. He found a clean t-shirt that would serve as a nightgown, swallowing her small frame, but providing something dry to sleep in. "The bathroom is through there," he said, pointing to an adjoining door. "And I'll be just down the hall if you need anything. Anything at all, Lily. You just call for me." Lily nodded, clutching the t-shirt to her chest. As Andrew turned to leave, her voice stopped him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing me." He turned back, struck by the simple power of those words. "Always," he promised. Hours dragged. Andrew tried to sleep, but his mind kept returning to the small girl down the hall, to the bruises on her arms, to the terror in her eyes, at the thought of returning to her aunt. He checked on her twice each time, finding her curled tightly on her blanket nest, rabbit clutched to her chest, face troubled even in sleep. Near midnight, a sudden cry split the air. "No, please stop!" Andrew bolted from his bed, racing down the hallway to the guest room. Lily was thrashing, tangled in the blankets, her face pale and slick with sweat. "Lily," he said firmly but softly, kneeling beside her, "you're safe. You're here with me." She gasped awake, her eyes wide and wild chest heaving. For a moment she stared at him as though unsure of where she was. Then almost desperately she grabbed his hand and held on tight. Andrew squeezed back, grounding her. His chest ached with something deeper than grief. He had lost a child once, but here was another one shaking and terrified, clinging to him as if he were the only anchor in the storm. "Do you want to hear a story?" he asked, voice rough. Lily nodded without letting go of his hand. Andrew reached for a book on the nearby shelf, one he hadn't opened in years. Sophie's favorite, its spine cracked from love, the pages worn from nightly readings. The words came halting at first, his throat thick, but soon the rhythm soothed them both. Lily's breathing slowed, her body softened, and after a while, she curled up against him, rabbit tucked between them. He read until her eyes fluttered closed, then sat there in the soft glow of the lamp, holding her. The penthouse, once hollow and silent, felt changed. The echo of loss was still there, but layered with something new, something alive. When she stirred again before dawn, she whispered, "Don't take me back." Andrew's answer came without hesitation. "I won't, I promise." And as the first light crept across the city, he knew he had already crossed a line he could never step back from. Whatever came next, whatever the cost, Lily was not going to face it alone. The morning in Boston was cold and gray, the kind of damp chill that seeped into your bones. Andrew wrapped Lily in one of his sweaters, the sleeves rolled up multiple times, but still hanging past her fingertips. He found a wool cap that covered her tangled hair and looped a scarf around her neck until she murmured that it was enough. She clutched her rabbit to her chest and walked beside him, her small steps cautious, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings as they left the building. "We're going to a doctor," he said softly as they entered his car. "I'll stay with you the entire time." She didn't answer, but her hand slipped into his as they drove, her fingers cold despite the car's heating. It was a small gesture of trust that felt monumental. The pediatric clinic sat at the corner of a narrow street, its walls painted with bright murals of animals and snowflakes tumbling across brick walls. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and coffee. A receptionist gave them a polite smile, the kind that didn't ask questions when Andrew explained they needed to see someone immediately. He had called ahead Alexandra's influence, securing an appointment with no notice. When the nurse called her name, Lily's shoulders stiffened. Andrew placed his hand lightly at her back, but didn't push. She walked on her own. Dr. Sofia Martinez introduced herself with a warmth that didn't feel forced. She crouched to Lily's level, her dark eyes kind behind stylish glasses. "I'll explain everything before I do it," she said gently. "You can tell me to stop whenever you want. Would you like Andrew to stay?" Lily gave a small nod, her fingers tightening around her rabbit. The exam was slow deliberate. Andrew stood against the wall, his face carefully neutral, as Dr. Martinez documented each injury. Old yellow bruises along the ribs, fresh purple marks at her elbow, a cut on her scalp, hidden by her hair, 2 teeth missing long before their time. Evidence of malnutrition of fear turned physical. "Has anyone ever hurt you like this before, Rebecca?" Dr. Martinez asked softly. Lily shook her head. "Mom never hurt me. She loved me. And Rebecca started hurting you after your mom died." A nod. "She was nice at first, then she changed." Dr. Martinez took photographs, her movements gentle but thorough. When she finished, she asked Lily if she could speak with Andrew in the hallway for a moment. Outside the exam room, the doctor's professional composure cracked slightly, anger flashing in her eyes. "She's been systematically abused," she said quietly. "The pattern of injuries, the malnutrition, the behavioral signs. This isn't an isolated incident." "I know," Andrew said, his voice tight. "I'm filing a report with Child Protective Services immediately," Dr. Martinez continued. "This child is not safe with this woman. The photographs and my medical report will support your case. What should I do now?" "Consistency," the doctor replied. "Meals at regular times, a safe place to sleep, choices that belong to her, and keep believing her. That matters more than anything." Andrew nodded. "There's something else. When I found her, she dropped a rabbit plush in a puddle. She hasn't let go of it since, even though it's still damp. Is that normal?" Dr. Martinez's expression softened. "It's a common response to trauma. That rabbit is probably the only constant in her life, the only thing that's truly hers. It's a comfort object, a connection to safety. Let her keep it close for as long as she needs." When they returned to the exam room, Lily was coloring quietly, her crayon never straying outside the lines of the picture, her movements precise and controlled. Even in this, Andrew could see the effects of fear, of the need to be perfect to avoid punishment. A knock sounded, and a woman in a navy jacket stepped in. "Jessica Wilson," she said, showing her badge with Child Protective Services. "I received a call from Dr. Martinez." She spoke first to Lily, asking about the rabbit, complimenting her careful coloring, establishing a rapport before any difficult questions. Then she turned to Andrew. "Can we speak privately for a moment?" In a quiet office, she explained the next steps. "We can request an emergency protection order that keeps her out of this Rebecca's custody. You can petition for temporary guardianship today. The court will want to see stability and a clear plan." "Tell me where to sign," Andrew said without hesitation. Jessica studied him for a moment, then nodded. "We'll move quickly, but you should know if this Rebecca has legal guardianship, this won't be simple. She could contest it." "Let her try," Andrew said, his voice quiet but steel-edged. By afternoon, they were back at the penthouse. Andrew taped a simple schedule to the fridge: breakfast quiet time, walk lunch reading dinner, bedtime story. He set gentle alarms on his phone to maintain the routine Dr. Martinez had recommended. Lunch was soup and toast. He asked Lily which chair she wanted. She chose the one with her back to the wall and ate in measured spoonfuls. He told her she could stop when she was done. She seemed startled by the freedom, but she finished and neatly placed her spoon across the bowl. Later, he pulled flour and sugar onto the counter. "We're making shortbread," he told her. Lily climbed onto a stool and watched carefully as he showed her how to level a cup with a knife. Together, they pressed the dough flat and scored it with fork marks. The kitchen filled with the warm smell of butter, and Lily's eyes closed for a second, as if she were memorizing the scent. "It smells like home," she whispered. They ate the cookies warm, and Andrew let the silence speak for them both. That evening, Jessica came for a home visit. She checked the locks, asked about keys, reviewed the medical report, and Andrew's statement. She made notes on her pad, her face grave but kind. "I'll file for emergency custody tonight," she said. "The hearing will be soon. If Rebecca contests, we'll need to be ready. Keep her days structured. Let her make choices, even small ones. Pajamas lamps what cup she uses. It rebuilds trust." Andrew signed the papers she laid before him. His hand shook once, then steadied. That night, as Lily slept in her nest of blankets, Andrew sat in his study computer, open to his company's annual report numbers, blurring before his eyes. His phone rang, Alexandra's name flashing on the screen. "I've been doing some digging," she said without greeting. "This Rebecca Shaw isn't who she claims to be. She has a history of drug charges and fraud-sealed juvenile records and 2 name changes. There's something very wrong here, Andrew." Andrew glanced toward the hallway where Lily slept. "Tell me what you found." Alexandra detailed her preliminary investigation. Rebecca Shaw had appeared in Elizabeth Collins' life shortly before her illness, positioning herself as a longtime friend despite no evidence of prior connection. After Elizabeth's death, she had quickly secured guardianship of Lily, along with control of a modest life insurance policy and Elizabeth's small estate. "The timing is suspicious," Alexandra continued, as Elizabeth Collins was reportedly in excellent health until Rebecca entered the picture. Then a sudden diagnosis of aggressive cancer, a rapid decline, and death within months. No autopsy was performed. "You think she murdered Lily's mother?" Andrew asked, his blood running cold. "I think it warrants investigation," Alexandra replied carefully. "Jessica is helping me access the sealed records. We need to know exactly who we're dealing with." After ending the call, Andrew checked on Lily once more. She slept fitfully, her small face troubled even in sleep. The magnitude of what he had undertaken was beginning to dawn on him. This wasn't just about keeping a child safe for a night or two. This was about standing between an innocent and someone who would hurt her, someone who might have already taken one life. As he watched Lily's chest rise and fall, Andrew felt something shift inside him, a resolve crystallizing into certainty. He had been unable to protect his own family. He had been driving that night, had insisted they take the shortcut, despite the storm had survived, when they hadn't. The guilt of it had hollowed him out, leaving him a shell, moving through the motions of living. But here was a child who needed him now. Here was a chance to protect someone who had no one else. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would keep her safe. The next day, as they walked through the penthouse lobby, Lily slowed by the grand piano in the corner. She hesitated, then whispered, "I used to play." Andrew asked the concierge for permission. Soon she was seated on the bench, her rabbit perched beside her. Her fingers trembled, then pressed a simple melody into the air, hesitant at first, then stronger. The sound carried through the room. Guests paused. A couple leaned closer together. Andrew stood at a distance, listening with his hands in his pockets, something long dormant stirring in his chest. When she finished, a small applause rose. Lily flinched at the sudden noise, her eyes darting to Andrew in alarm. "It's okay," he assured her, moving closer. "They liked your playing." "Mom taught me," she said softly as they entered the elevator, "before she got sick. But Aunt Rebecca said music was a waste of time." Andrew looked down at her, at the way her small fingers still moved slightly, as if continuing the melody. "Music is never a waste of time," he said. "If you want, we could find you a teacher." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" For the first time since he had found her in the market, Lily smiled. It was small, tentative, but it transformed her face, revealing a glimpse of the child she should have been allowed to remain. The moment shattered as the elevator doors opened onto his floor. A woman stood in the hallway, her back to them, examining the numbers on the doors. She turned at the sound of the elevator, and Lily's hand suddenly clutched Andrew's with painful intensity. Rebecca Shaw. She wore a tailored coat, her hair perfectly styled makeup, concealing any sign of the previous night's intoxication. But her eyes were the same, calculating and cold, as they moved from Andrew to Lily. "There you are," she said, her voice honey-sweet. "I've been so worried, darling." Lily pressed against Andrew's side, her body trembling. He shifted slightly, placing himself between them. "You need to leave," he said evenly. Rebecca's smile didn't falter. "I don't think so. You've taken my niece. That's kidnapping, Mr. Morgan. Yes, I know who you are. It wasn't difficult to find out. Your niece shows signs of systematic abuse." Andrew replied, his voice low but firm. Child Protective Services has been notified. There's an emergency protection order being processed as we speak. Rebecca's smile tightened. You have no idea what you're dealing with, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. That child is mine. The courts will see it that way. And when they do, you'll regret the day you interfered. Andrew felt Lily shaking against him, her fear a tangible thing. If you don't leave immediately, I'm calling security. Rebecca stepped closer, her perfume heavy in the confined space of the hallway. You think your money protects you? You think you can just take what's mine? You'll see what happens to men who get in my way. Before Andrew could respond, the elevator doors opened again and Jessica Wilson stepped out, accompanied by a security guard. Rebecca Shaw, Jessica asked, though it clearly wasn't a question. I'm Jessica Wilson with Child Protective Services. I need to inform you that an emergency protection order has been granted. You are not to approach Lily Collins or attempt contact until the court hearing. Rebecca's facade cracked fury flashing in her eyes before she controlled it. This is absurd. She's my legal charge. I have documents. Which will be reviewed at the hearing, Jessica replied calmly. For now, the order stands. If you violate it, you'll be arrested. Rebecca's gaze moved to Lily, who shrank further behind Andrew. This isn't over, she said softly. Not by a long shot. Remember what I told you, Lily? Nobody wants you but me. Andrew felt Lily's fingers dig into his hand. He squeezed back gently, a silent promise. The security guard stepped forward. Ma'am, I need you to come with me now. Rebecca allowed herself to be escorted to the elevator, her posture rigid with rage. As the doors closed on her, she smiled, a cold curve of lips that sent a chill down Andrew's spine. Inside the apartment, Lily collapsed onto the couch, her small body shaking with silent sobs. Andrew sat beside her, uncertain how to comfort her, wishing he remembered better how to be gentle. She'll come back, Lily whispered between breaths. She always comes back. Jessica set her briefcase on the coffee table and knelt in front of Lily. Not this time, she said firmly. We're going to make sure of that. Lily looked up, her tear-streaked face, desperate for reassurance. Promise? Jessica glanced at Andrew, then back to Lily. We promise. Later, after Jessica had gone, after the locks had been double-checked and the security desk alerted, to prevent Rebecca's return, Andrew found Lily at the window. She had taped a drawing to the glass, a castle with two small figures inside. What's this? He asked gently. That's where people can't hurt us, she said simply. Andrew swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. He didn't tell her that he wished it were real. He just promised himself to make it feel real. That night, he moved his mattress into the guest room, placing it on the floor beside Lily's nest of blankets. When she looked at him questioningly, he explained, So, you'll know you're not alone if you wake up. Lily considered this, then nodded, settling under her blankets with her rabbit tucked securely under one arm. Just before sleep claimed her, she whispered, Thank you for fighting for me. Andrew lay in the darkness, listening to her breathing, even out his heart heavy with the weight of her trust and the certainty of the battle ahead. Rebecca Shaw was not going to give up easily. She had something to hide, something worth killing for perhaps, and Lily was somehow connected to it. He closed his eyes, remembering Rebecca's threat. You'll see what happens to men who get in my way. The words carried a history of violence, of consequences, delivered without mercy. Let her come, Andrew thought as sleep finally claimed him. I've already lost everything once. I have nothing left to fear. But even as the thought formed, he knew it wasn't true. He had Lily now, and for the first time in 4 years, he had something to protect, something to fight for, something to live for. Dawn broke cold and gray over Boston, painting the skyline in muted watercolors. Andrew Morgan stood at the penthouse window, watching the city awaken, while Lily slept in her nest of blankets. His phone vibrated silently in his hand. Alexandra Foster, calling again the third time since midnight. Tell me, he answered without preamble. We need to move, Alexandra said, her voice tense. Rebecca has filed a kidnapping charge against you. She claims you took Lily under false pretenses. There's a warrant being processed. Andrew's grip tightened on the phone. That's absurd. We have the protection order, which only prevents her from approaching Lily. It doesn't establish your right to keep her. Alexandra paused. There's more, Andrew. I've been looking into Rebecca's background. She's changed her name twice. Before she was Rebecca Shaw, she was Rachel Stevens, and before that, Regina Simmons. Why would she change her name multiple times? That's what concerns me. Under each identity, she's been connected to a vulnerable woman who died under suspicious circumstances. And each time she ended up with custody of the woman's child and control of their assets. Andrew turned from the window, his gaze falling on Lily's small form. You think she's done this before? I think we're dealing with someone very dangerous. The police report from Jessica has temporarily delayed the warrant, but Rebecca has resources and connections we didn't anticipate. You and Lily need to get somewhere safe until I can sort this out. Andrew didn't hesitate. I know a place. He moved quickly, gathering only what they would need for a few days. Warm clothes for Lily, her now dry rabbit medications Dr. Martinez had prescribed for her malnutrition. He packed light, the habits of a man who had traveled the world for business, serving him well. When Lily stirred awake, he knelt beside her, keeping his voice calm, despite the urgency pulsing through him. Good morning. We're going on a little trip today, somewhere safe. Lily's eyes widened, immediately alert. She sat up, clutching her rabbit. She's coming, isn't she, Aunt Rebecca? Andrew considered lying, then decided against it. This child had been lied to enough. Yes, but we're not going to let her find you. I promise. She always finds me, Lily whispered, her voice hollow with certainty. Every time I thought I was safe, she came back. Andrew reached out gently, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Not this time. This time you have me. Lily studied his face, searching for deception. Then, with a solemnity that broke his heart, she said, I need to bring Hoppy. Mom made him for me. Of course, Hoppy comes with us. Andrew helped her to her feet. We need to be quick and quiet, okay? Like a secret mission. This brought the ghost of a smile to her face. Like spies. Exactly like spies. They left through the service entrance, avoiding the lobby where Rebecca might be watching. Andrew's car waited in the private garage, already packed with their essentials. As they pulled onto the early morning streets, he glanced in the rearview mirror, watching Lily huddle in the back seat, her eyes scanning the passing buildings. Where are we going? She asked finally, her voice small against the hum of the engine. Andrew hesitated. A place I haven't been in a long time. A house in the country. It belonged to my family. Lily absorbed this without comment. They drove in silence, leaving the city behind the urban landscape, giving way to suburbs, then to the rolling hills of rural Massachusetts. The tension in Andrew's shoulders began to ease, only when Boston vanished behind them. Still, he checked the mirrors, constantly alert for any vehicle that might be following. 2 hours later, they turned onto a narrow lane bordered by ancient oaks. At its end stood a colonial-style house, white with green shutters, a wraparound porch embracing it like protective arms. Andrew stopped the car, his hands tight on the wheel as memories assaulted him. This had been their summer home. Elena had loved the gardens, Sophie the tire swing that still hung from the massive oak tree. He hadn't returned since the accident, unable to face the ghosts that dwelled here. Is this it? Lily asked, peering through the window. Yes, Andrew managed. This is it. They approached the house together, Lily's hand slipping into his as they climbed the porch steps. The key felt strange in his hand, unused for so long. The door opened with a familiar creak, revealing rooms shrouded in dust covers and memories. It smells old, Lily observed, her nose wrinkling slightly. Andrew found himself chuckling, the sound rusty but genuine. It is old, but we'll open some windows, let in some air. It'll feel like home soon. They moved through the house together, Andrew pulling off dust covers, Lily trailing behind him, her eyes wide as she took in the comfortable furniture, the bookshelves, the piano in the corner of the living room. When they reached the second floor, Andrew hesitated outside a door painted pale blue. Sophie's room. What's in there? Lily asked, sensing his hesitation. Andrew took a deep breath. It was my daughter's room, Sophie. Lily looked up at him, her expression suddenly understanding in a way no child should have to be. Is she in heaven with my mom? The question, so innocent and so devastating, nearly undid him. Yes, he said finally. She is. Lily nodded solemnly. Can I see her room? Andrew hesitated, then turned the knob. The room was exactly as Sophie had left it 4 years ago, frozen in time like a museum exhibit. Stuffed animals arranged on the bed, books stacked on the nightstand, a collection of seashells on the windowsill. Lily moved into the room slowly, her eyes taking everything in. She approached the bed, touching the stuffed elephant that had been Sophie's favorite, with gentle fingers. She liked elephants. She loved them, Andrew said, his voice thick. She wanted to be a zookeeper when she grew up. Lily considered this seriously. I want to be a musician, like my mom. They stood there together in the stillness of the room, a strange comfort in their shared loss. Finally, Lily turned to him. "I won't touch her things, I promise." Andrew felt something shift inside him, a door long rusted shut, creaking open. "Sophie would have wanted you to enjoy them. She was very good at sharing." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Really? You can use this room if you'd like. I think she would be happy about that." A small smile blossomed on Lily's face, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Thank you. I'll be careful." Andrew left her to explore, needing a moment alone. He moved to the master bedroom, standing in the center of the space that had once held his marriage, his happiness, his unexamined good fortune. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. The silence was complete. His phone vibrated. Jessica Wilson. "We've got a problem," she said when he answered. "Rebecca has filed for an emergency hearing. She's claiming you're mentally unstable, still grieving your family, and that you fixated on Lily as a replacement for your daughter." Cold anger settled in Andrew's stomach. "That's ridiculous." "It's also effective. She's painting herself as the concerned guardian, you as the unstable rich man using his influence to take a child that isn't his. The judge assigned to the case has set a hearing for next week." "What do we need to do?" "Gather evidence," Jessica said firmly. "We need proof of the abuse, proof of Rebecca's real identity, proof of her connection to the other suspicious deaths. Alexandra is working on the legal angle, but we need concrete evidence." After ending the call, Andrew found Lily sitting at the piano downstairs, her small fingers ghosting over the keys without pressing them. "Do you want to play?" he asked. She looked up hesitant. "Is it okay?" "Of course." Her fingers pressed down gently, a simple melody filling the house. Andrew closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. It had been so long since music had filled this space. When she finished, Lily turned on the bench to face him. "My mom was teaching me this song before she got sick. She was really good. She played in concerts." "She sounds wonderful." Lily nodded, her eyes distant. "She was, until Aunt Rebecca came to live with us. Then she started getting sick. She couldn't play anymore. Her hands shook too much." Her small face clouded. "Aunt Rebecca said she was just being dramatic, but Mom was never dramatic. She was always strong." Andrew sat beside her on the bench. "Lily, can you tell me more about how your mom got sick? What do you remember?" Lily's fingers traced the pattern of the wood grain on the piano. "It started after Aunt Rebecca moved in. Mom kept getting really tired. Then she started throwing up a lot. Her hair started falling out. Aunt Rebecca said it was cancer, but..." She hesitated. "But what Mom told me once when Aunt Rebecca wasn't home that she didn't think it was cancer. She said something felt wrong. She made me promise to be brave if anything happened to her." Andrew felt a chill. "Did your mom ever see another doctor? Someone besides the ones Rebecca took her to?" Lily shook her head. "Aunt Rebecca said she was the only one who cared enough to help, that everyone else had abandoned us." The classic isolation technique of an abuser. Andrew kept his voice gentle. "And after your mom died?" "Aunt Rebecca changed," Lily said simply. "She wasn't nice anymore. She said I cost too much money, that no one would want a burdensome child, that I should be grateful she kept me." Andrew fought to keep his expression neutral, not wanting Lily to see the rage building inside him. "You are not a burden, Lily. You are a gift." Her eyes filled with tears that didn't fall. Children who had been abused often learned not to cry, knowing it only brought more pain. Andrew wished he could erase every moment of fear she had endured, every harsh word, every blow. "I'm going to make us some lunch," he said finally. "Would you like to help?" They spent the afternoon establishing a new routine in the old house. Andrew found clean linens in the hall closet, showed Lily how to make a bed with hospital corners, the way his mother had taught him. They aired out rooms, dusted surfaces, made the space livable again. As evening approached, Andrew received another call, this time from Dave Peterson, the private investigator Alexandra had hired. "I've been looking into the other cases," Dave said without preamble. "Two women, both single mothers, both died of apparent illness after Rebecca entered their lives. Both had modest estates that Rebecca gained control of as guardian of their children." "What happened to the children?" Andrew asked, stepping onto the porch to keep the conversation private. There was a heavy pause. "They disappeared. One supposedly went to live with a distant relative. The other was placed in foster care, but the records stopped there. I'm still digging, but it doesn't look good." Andrew watched through the window as Lily arranged Sophie's stuffed animals on the bed, talking to them softly. She's planning something, Dave. I need to know what. I'm on it. But Morgan, be careful. This woman has managed to avoid detection through multiple identities. She's smart, and based on what I'm finding, completely ruthless. After dinner, Andrew helped Lily settle into Sophie's room. The stuffed elephant now sat beside Hoppy the rabbit, on the pillow, two guardians watching over her sleep. "Will you read to me?" she asked as he tucked the blanket around her. Of course. Andrew selected a book from the shelf, one of Sophie's favorites, and began to read. He was halfway through the second chapter when he realized Lily had fallen asleep, her face peaceful in a way it never was when awake. He sat there for a long time watching her breathe, making silent promises to her and to Sophie, to Elena, to himself. Promises of protection, of justice, of a future where Lily would never again flinch at a raised voice or cower from an outstretched hand. The house creaked and settled around him, familiar sounds, from a life that seemed to belong to someone else now. He had been a different man, then focused on acquisition, on empire building, on a future that could be shaped and controlled. The accident had taught him the illusion of that control. And now Lily was teaching him something else entirely. Morning brought rain, a gentle patter against the windows that filled the house with a cozy gray light. Andrew made pancakes, remembering how Sophie had loved them, shaped like animals. He attempted an elephant for Lily, producing something that looked more like an amoeba with a trunk. Lily giggled when he said it before her, the sound so unexpected and precious that Andrew nearly dropped the spatula. He hadn't heard her laugh before. It transformed her face, erasing the wariness, revealing the child she should have been allowed to remain. "It looks like a blob monster," she declared, poking it with her fork. "Clearly, I missed my calling as an artist," Andrew said solemnly, which produced another cascade of giggles. The sound of tires on gravel silenced them both. Andrew moved to the window body, tense, ready to grab Lily and run if necessary. A familiar car pulled up, Alexandra Foster emerging with a portfolio under her arm, Jessica Wilson following in a separate vehicle. "Stay here," Andrew told Lily, moving to meet them on the porch. Alexandra's expression was grim as she climbed the steps. "We have news," she said, glancing back at Jessica. "Not all of it good." Inside, after confirming Lily was out of earshot, they laid out what they had discovered. Rebecca's pattern was clear now. 3 women, all single mothers with modest estates or insurance policies. All befriended by Rebecca in their time of need. All dead within a year of her arrival in their lives. "We believe she's been poisoning them," Jessica said bluntly. "Slow administration of heavy metals, probably arsenic or thallium. The symptoms mimic certain cancers and are difficult to detect unless you're specifically looking for poisoning." "And the children?" Andrew asked, his throat tight. Alexandra and Jessica exchanged a look. "One died in foster care. Apparent suicide, but the investigation was cursory at best. The other disappeared from the system. No records of adoption, no death certificate, just gone." The implication hung in the air between them, too monstrous to voice aloud. "She's going to try again with Lily," Andrew said, finally, the words falling like stones. "She needs to eliminate her to maintain control of Elizabeth's estate." "Not just Elizabeth's estate," Alexandra interjected. "There's something bigger. Rebecca has a partner, a man named Richard Payne. He's a real estate attorney who specializes in trust management. He processed the paperwork for all 3 estates. And here's the connection we've been missing. Elizabeth Collins had a substantial inheritance being held in trust until Lily turns 18. Nearly $2 million from Elizabeth's grandparents." Andrew's mind raced. "So Rebecca eliminates Elizabeth, gains control of Lily, and plans to eliminate her as well, once she has access to the trust." "That's our theory," Jessica confirmed. "But proving it is another matter. We need concrete evidence that Elizabeth was poisoned and that Rebecca was responsible." "The medical records," Andrew began. "Altered or missing," Alexandra cut in. Rebecca was careful. She positioned herself as Elizabeth's medical proxy, controlled access to doctors, kept Lily isolated from other adults who might notice something wrong. "But she made one mistake," Jessica added, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Elizabeth's regular doctor, a Martin Reynolds, became suspicious shortly before her death. He took blood samples, hair samples, trying to identify what was really happening. Rebecca prevented him from running the tests by convincing Elizabeth to switch doctors, claiming he was incompetent." "Do those samples still exist?" Andrew asked. "That's what we're trying to find out. Reynolds retired shortly after Elizabeth's death, moved to New Hampshire. Dave is tracking him down now. Andrew nodded, processing. What about Richard Payne? Can we get to him? Possibly, Alexandra said. He seems to be the weaker link, more interested in money than whatever else motivates Rebecca. If we could turn him... The conversation halted as Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with apprehension. Is something wrong? She asked, her voice small. Andrew crossed to her, kneeling to her level. No, sweetheart. These are my friends, Alexandra and Jessica. They're helping us make sure you stay safe. Lily studied the two women carefully, the wariness never fully absent from her expression. Are they looking for Aunt Rebecca? Yes, Andrew said honestly. They're going to help make sure she can't hurt you anymore. Lily absorbed this, then asked in a voice so soft they had to strain to hear, What about the others? The room went still. What others, Lily? Jessica asked gently. The other kids. The ones Aunt Rebecca talks about on the phone. The ones who caused too many problems. Alexandra moved forward slowly, crouching beside Andrew. Lily, has Rebecca talked about other children? Lily nodded, her fingers worrying the hem of her sweater. Sometimes she talks on the phone late at night. She thinks I'm asleep. She talks about the others and how they were taken care of. She says I'll end up like them if I'm not good. The three adults exchanged glances, the implications chilling. Jessica spoke first, her voice professionally calm, despite the horror in her eyes. Lily, would you be willing to tell me more about these phone calls? What exactly you heard? Lily looked to Andrew, seeking reassurance. He nodded encouragingly. It's okay. The more we know, the better we can protect you. They moved to the kitchen table, where Jessica gently questioned Lily while recording her responses. Lily revealed more than they had dared hope, specific conversations, overheard names mentioned, including Richard's details about bank accounts and trust funds. Rebecca's careful facade had slipped in the privacy of her home, revealing glimpses of her true nature to the child she thought too frightened or too insignificant to understand. She said once that when she was done with me, they'd be rich. Lily concluded, her voice steady, despite the terrible weight of her words, that I was worth more dead than alive because of the trust fund. Andrew felt physically ill. Alexandra's face had gone pale, while Jessica maintained her professional composure only through visible effort. You've been very brave, Lily, Jessica said finally. This helps us enormously. Lily nodded solemnly. Mom always said the truth was important, even when it's scary. Your mom was very wise, Andrew said, his voice rough with emotion. After Lily had been settled in the living room with a book, the adults conferred in hushed tones in the kitchen. It's enough for a deeper investigation, Jessica confirmed, but not enough for an arrest. We still need physical evidence of the poisoning. And we need to move quickly, Alexandra added. The hearing is in 5 days. Rebecca is building her case, painting Andrew as unstable and obsessed. She has character witnesses ready to testify, including a psychologist who's prepared to state that Andrew is suffering from unresolved grief and has fixated on Lily as a replacement for his daughter. Andrew's jaw tightened. Let them try. I'll bring an army of psychiatrists who'll testify to the contrary. It's not that simple, Alexandra said gently. Rebecca has been laying this groundwork for weeks, possibly months. She's been researching you, Andrew. She knew about your family's accident, knew you were vulnerable. I think she's been watching you for some time. Why? Andrew demanded. What possible interest could she have in me? Alexandra hesitated, then pulled a photograph from her portfolio. This was taken 3 years ago, a charity function for the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Andrew studied the image. It showed him at a gala, standing with Elena, and in the background, almost out of frame, but unmistakable, now that he knew to look for her, was Rebecca Shaw. She's been stalking you, Jessica said quietly, long before Lily entered the picture. Andrew felt the blood drain from his face. This was a year after the accident. Elena was already gone. Alexandra nodded grimly. Exactly, which means Rebecca's interest in you predates her connection to Lily. This isn't random, Andrew. She targeted you specifically. The implications were staggering. Rebecca hadn't just happened upon Lily in a scheme to steal her inheritance. She had deliberately maneuvered to place Lily in Andrew's path, knowing his history, his loss, his vulnerability to a child in danger. But why? He asked again, struggling to make sense of it. We don't know yet, Jessica admitted, but Dave is digging deeper. There has to be a connection we're missing. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls, planning, and mounting tension. Dave confirmed he had located Dr. Reynolds and would meet with him the next day. Alexandra worked on legal strategies for the upcoming hearing. Jessica coordinated with police contacts to monitor Rebecca's movements without tipping her off to the investigation. Evening found Andrew and Lily on the porch swing watching the sun set over the distant hills. Lily leaned against him, her small body relaxed in a way it never had been before. "Andrew," she said, her voice thoughtful, "are you going to be my dad now?" The question caught him off guard, sending a surge of emotion through him that he wasn't prepared for. "Would you want that?" he asked carefully. Lily considered this with serious deliberation. "Yes," she said finally. "You're nice. You don't yell. You make funny-shaped pancakes. And you believe me when I tell the truth." Such simple requirements for fatherhood, and yet they revealed so much about what this child had been denied. Andrew felt his throat tighten. "I would be honored to be your dad, Lily, but there are legal processes we need to go through first." She nodded, accepting this with the pragmatism of a child who had learned early that wishing didn't make things so. "That's okay. I can wait." They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, until Lily spoke again. "I think my mom would have liked you. She always said a good man is someone who listens more than he talks." Andrew smiled. "Your mom sounds very wise." "She was." Lily's voice wavered slightly. "I miss her." "I know, sweetheart. I miss my family too." Lily looked up at him, her eyes solemn in the fading light. "Maybe we can miss them together. That might make it easier." Out of the mouths of babes, Andrew thought, marveling at the simple wisdom of her suggestion. "I think you're right. It does make it easier." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Andrew sat on the porch alone, nursing a glass of whiskey, his mind racing with all they had learned. The connections between Rebecca and himself, the larger pattern of her crimes, the precarious position Lily was still in despite their best efforts. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he almost missed the sound. A twig snapping in the darkness beyond the porch light's reach. His body tensed, senses suddenly alert. Another sound, soft but unmistakable. Footsteps on the gravel path. Andrew set down his glass silently and moved to the door, intending to lock it to check on Lily. Before he could reach the handle, a figure stepped into the pool of light. A woman, but not Rebecca. Her face was vaguely familiar, though he couldn't immediately place it. "Mr. Morgan," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the night air. "I'm Emily Parker, Elena's sister." Andrew froze, shock rendering him momentarily speechless. Emily, his sister-in-law, the woman who had refused to speak to him after the accident, who had blamed him openly for Elena and Sophie's deaths, who had cut all contact and disappeared from his life entirely. "Emily," he managed finally, "what are you doing here?" She stepped closer, her resemblance to Elena painfully apparent now that he could see her clearly. The same cheekbones, the same determined set of the jaw. "Alexandra found me, said you were in trouble, that you were protecting a child." Andrew nodded cautiously, still struggling to process her sudden appearance. "Her name is Lily. She's 7. Something flickered in Emily's eyes, a mixture of pain and resolution. "The woman who's after her, Rebecca Shaw. I know her." The night air seemed to grow colder. "How?" Andrew asked, his voice sharp with sudden tension. Emily's face hardened. "She used to be Rachel Stevens. She lived in my apartment building in Chicago 5 years ago. She befriended my neighbor, a single mother, named Diane. Within 6 months, Diane was dead. Cancer, they said. Her son disappeared into the foster system. The pieces were falling into place now, a pattern too terrible to be coincidence. And you think it's the same woman?" Emily reached into her bag and withdrew a photograph. "I know it is." The image showed a younger Rebecca, her hair styled differently, but her eyes unmistakable, standing beside a thin woman who held a small boy by the hand. All three were smiling at the camera, a perfect tableau of friendship that now seemed sinister in its deception. "Why is she doing this?" Andrew asked the question that had haunted him all day. Emily's expression darkened. "I think she's selecting her victims carefully. Women without support systems, with small children and some financial assets. Easy to isolate, easy to control, easy to eliminate when they're no longer useful. But why target me specifically? She's been watching me for years, long before Lily." Emily hesitated, then spoke with obvious reluctance. "Because of Elena. Because of what happened to your family." Andrew felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean?" "The accident that killed Elena and Sophie. It wasn't random Andrew. The driver who hit them, the one who was supposedly drunk, he worked for a car service company owned by Richard Payne, Rebecca's partner. The world seemed to tilt beneath Andrew's feet. He reached for the porch railing to steady himself, the implications of Emily's words crashing over him like a wave of ice water. "Are you saying they murdered my family?" Emily's eyes were filled with a mix of sorrow and rage. "I've spent 3 years trying to prove it. I couldn't. The driver died in the accident too. Convenient. No trail to follow, no one to question. But I kept digging, found connections, patterns. Rebecca and Richard have been working together for a decade, targeting families, creating accidents, positioning themselves to swoop in and claim the assets." Andrew struggled to breathe, his mind reeling. But why Lily? Why Elizabeth? "I think they selected Elizabeth as a target for her trust fund, but then they discovered your connection to me, to Elena. They saw an opportunity for something bigger." Emily paused. "Your company, Andrew, your wealth. If they could position Rebecca as the caring guardian of a traumatized child, then maneuver you into trying to adopt that child only to be declared mentally unstable. They could gain control of my assets through Lily." Andrew finished, the horrifying logic becoming clear. "Make me the unstable rich man obsessed with replacing his dead daughter. Have me declared incompetent. Rebecca becomes Lily's guardian, gets control of both her trust fund and access to my fortune through a sympathetic court." Emily nodded grimly. "It's elegant in a monstrous way. They've done it before on a smaller scale, but you're the big prize." Andrew's mind raced, processing this new information, recalibrating everything he thought he knew. "We need to tell Alexandra, Jessica. They need to know what we're really dealing with." Emily looked past him toward the darkened house. "Is she asleep?" The little girl. "Yes, upstairs." Emily's expression softened slightly. "Alexandra says you've been good to her, that you're fighting for her." Andrew met her gaze steadily. "I would die for her." Something in Emily's face shifted, a grudging respect replacing the coldness. "Then maybe you've changed after all." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Rebecca isn't working alone. Richard is the money man, but there are others. People watching this house right now, probably." As if summoned by her words, a beam of light flashed briefly in the woods beyond the lawn. A flashlight quickly extinguished, but unmistakable, in the darkness. "Inside," Andrew said tersely, holding the door for Emily. "Now." They moved through the house silently, Andrew checking windows, securing doors, his mind calculating options, escape routes, defensive positions. Emily followed, her earlier hostility temporarily set aside in the face of immediate danger. "We need to wake Lily," Andrew said, his voice low. "Get her ready to move, if necessary." Emily nodded. "I have a cabin in Maine, off the grid. They won't find us there." The us surprised him, but Andrew didn't question it. They needed allies, and Emily's grudge against Rebecca clearly ran as deep as his own. They crept upstairs, Andrew leading the way to Sophie's room, where Lily slept. He opened the door slowly, expecting to see her small form under the blankets. The bed was empty. Panic surged through him, cold and immediate. He moved to the bathroom, checked under the bed behind the curtains. Nothing. "Lily," he called, abandoning stealth in his rising fear. "Lily, where are you?" No answer. The house remained silent around them, holding its secrets. Emily moved past him, checking the other bedrooms with quick, efficient movements. She returned, her face grim. "She's not here." Andrew stood frozen, staring at the empty bed, at Hoppy the rabbit, still sitting on the pillow. Lily never went anywhere without that rabbit, which meant she hadn't left willingly. A flash of white on the pillow caught his eye. A folded piece of paper placed where Lily's head should have been. With trembling fingers, he unfolded it. The message was brief, written in an elegant hand that seemed to mock him with its civility. "She's mine. She's always been mine. If you want to see her alive again, come alone to the address below. Tell anyone, bring anyone, and she'll suffer before she dies. You have until midnight." Emily read over his shoulder, her breath catching. "It's a trap," she whispered. "Of course it is." Andrew replied, his voice deadly calm, as rage and fear crystallized into a single focused purpose. "But I'm still going. They'll kill you both." Andrew turned to her, his eyes hard with a determination that would have been unrecognizable to anyone who had known him in his corporate life. "Not if I kill them first." In that moment, as he stared at the empty bed where a child who had come to mean everything to him should have been sleeping safely, Andrew Morgan shed the last vestiges of the man he had been. The careful businessman, the grieving widower, the isolated survivor, all fell away, revealing something older and more primal beneath. A father ready to tear the world apart to protect his child. Rebecca had made a fatal miscalculation. She had studied Andrew Morgan, the CEO, Andrew Morgan, the grieving husband, Andrew Morgan, the broken man. But she had failed to anticipate what he would become when given something to fight for again. And now she would pay for that mistake. Midnight approached like a gathering storm, each tick of the clock hammering against Andrew Morgan's consciousness. The address on the note led to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Boston, a forgotten structure surrounded by the skeletal remains of industrial prosperity long departed. Andrew stood in the shadows across the street, calculating his breath forming clouds in the cold night air. Emily had argued fiercely against his coming alone. Alexandra and Jessica, once informed of the situation, had insisted on police involvement, but Andrew had been immovable. The note had been explicit: come alone or Lily dies. He would not gamble with her life. That didn't mean he came unprepared. The warehouse loomed against the night sky, most windows broken, or boarded, a few lights visible within casting weak yellow illumination through the cracks. A black sedan was parked near the side entrance, its presence confirming what Andrew already knew. Rebecca was waiting. He touched the inside pocket of his coat, feeling the outline of the small recording device Emily had given him. His phone was set to transmit his location continuously to Alexandra, who waited with Dave Peterson and 2 private security contractors several blocks away, ready to move at his signal. In his other pocket rested a small handgun, cold and unfamiliar against his palm. Andrew had never fired a weapon outside a shooting range, had never imagined he would need to. But when Dave had pressed it into his hand with a grave expression and brief instructions, Andrew had accepted without hesitation. For Lily, there were no limits to what he would do. With one last glance at the time, he moved across the street, keeping to the shadows until he reached the entrance indicated in the note. The door hung partially open, an invitation that could not be anything but a trap. Andrew paused, gathering his resolve, picturing Lily's face, her trust, her small hand in his. He stepped inside. The warehouse interior was cavernous support columns rising like ancient trees to the distant ceiling, moonlight filtering through broken skylights to pool on the concrete floor. The air smelled of rust and abandonment, of things left to decay. Andrew moved forward slowly, every sense heightened, following the dim path of light that seemed to lead toward the center of the building. "You came alone. I'm impressed." Rebecca's voice echoed from somewhere ahead, its familiar cadence now stripped of all pretense at warmth. Andrew continued walking, his footsteps deliberate, unhurried, betraying none of the rage and fear churning inside him. "Where is Lily?" he asked, his voice steady. A chuckle, dry and humorless, drifted through the shadows. "So direct. No pleasantries, Mr. Morgan. No negotiation. I thought businessmen like you lived for the deal." Andrew emerged into a cleared area at the center of the warehouse. Portable lights had been set up, creating a harsh island of illumination. Rebecca stood in its center, elegant even now in her tailored coat, her hair perfectly styled, her smile sharp as a blade. Beside her, silent and watchful, stood a man Andrew recognized from Alexandra's briefing photos, Richard Payne, attorney, accomplice, murderer. Of Lily, there was no sign. "I asked you a question," Andrew said, moving closer, stopping just at the edge of the light. "Where is Lily?" Rebecca's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed suddenly too sharp, too predatory. "Safe, for now. But this isn't about her, is it?" "It never was. She's just a means to an end, a very valuable pawn in our little game." Andrew forced himself to remain still, to betray no emotion, though every fiber of his being screamed to lunge for her throat. "And what game is that, Rebecca? Or should I call you Rachel Regina?" Something flickered in her eyes, a momentary surprise, quickly masked. "You've been busy. Did your pet lawyer find my trail? Alexandra is thorough. I'll give her that. But it doesn't matter now. It matters to the families of the women you murdered," Andrew said coldly. "To the children you eliminated when they became inconvenient." Richard shifted uneasily at this, a movement so slight it would have been imperceptible to anyone less alert, less desperate to find any advantage. Rebecca noticed it too. Her smile faltered briefly as she cast a sideways glance at her partner. Richard is squeamish about certain necessities, she said, her tone dismissive, but he enjoys the profits well enough. Andrew catalogued the interaction, filing it away. A crack in their alliance, perhaps, something he could exploit. Why target me? He asked, changing tactics. Why my family? Rebecca's expression changed, something almost like excitement, animating her features. You recognized me at the market that night, didn't you? Something in your eyes when you stepped between me and Lily, a flicker of familiarity. I'd never seen you before. Oh, but you had, many times. You just never noticed me. No one ever notices the woman serving drinks at charity galas, or filing papers in a doctor's office, or delivering flowers to a grieving widower. Her voice hardened. I was invisible to you, to all of you, the successful, the privileged, the untouchable. Andrew stared at her, realization dawning. You were stalking me. Studying you. Rebecca corrected, her tone almost professorial. Learning your patterns, your weaknesses, your pressure points, just as I studied Elena before her unfortunate accident. She smiled at the shock that Andrew couldn't quite conceal. Oh yes, your wife was the original target. Such a perfect candidate. Wealthy family, charitable nature, trusting to a fault. The plan was simple: befriend her, eliminate her console, the grieving husband, eventually marry into the Morgan fortune. Andrew's hand tightened around the gun in his pocket, rage building like a physical pressure behind his ribs. Then why kill her and Sophie in the crash? Why not follow your usual pattern? Rebecca's face darkened. Because your precious wife rejected my friendship. She saw through me somehow, kept her distance, forced a change of plans. Her eyes gleamed with a hatred that seemed bottomless. So Richard arranged for a more direct approach. A tragic accident that would leave you vulnerable, isolated, primed for the next phase. Which was Lily, Andrew said, the pieces falling into place. You murdered Elizabeth Collins, took custody of Lily, arranged for me to find her being abused. A wounded child for a wounded man. Rebecca smiled, a cold curving of lips that never reached her eyes. Poetic, isn't it? You, the grieving father, who lost everything, finding redemption by saving a child who reminds you of your dead daughter. So perfect that no one would question your obsession with her, your sudden determination to adopt her. And then when the time was right, you'd have me declared unstable, Andrew finished, his voice flat. The rich man broken by grief, fixated on a replacement child. You'd gain control of Lily's trust fund and access to my assets as her guardian. 2 birds, 1 stone, Rebecca confirmed, her voice almost admiring of her own scheme. Though I must admit you've proven more resilient than anticipated, more formidable. Where is Lily? Andrew asked again, ignoring her attempt at flattery. I won't ask a third time. Rebecca studied him, head tilted slightly, as if reassessing his threat level. Then she nodded to Richard, who disappeared behind a stack of crates, returning moments later, half dragging Lily by the arm. Andrew's heart seized at the sight of her. She looked small and terrified, her face pale, a bruise darkening one cheek where she had clearly been struck. But she was alive, her eyes widening with hope and fear when she saw him. Andrew, she cried, trying to pull away from Richard's grip. You came? Of course I came, Andrew said, his voice gentle despite the fury coursing through him. I promised I'd keep you safe, didn't I? Rebecca laughed, the sound echoing harshly through the warehouse. How touching, the makeshift father ready to save his stolen daughter. She pulled something from her coat pocket, a syringe, its contents catching the light. Unfortunately, your story ends here, Mr. Morgan. A tragic overdose for the unstable businessman. A terrible loss for the already traumatized child. The courts will have no choice but to return her to my custody after such a tragedy. Andrew watched the syringe, his mind racing. The gun in his pocket was a last resort. Too risky with Lily so close, with Richard's hand still gripping her arm. You won't get away with it, he said, playing for time, edging subtly closer. Alexandra and Jessica know everything. The police are investigating the previous murders. Emily Parker has given her testimony. At the mention of Emily's name, Rebecca's composure finally cracked, her eyes widening with genuine shock. Emily Parker is dead. She died in the fire at her apartment 3 years ago. Andrew allowed himself a cold smile. Did she escape knowing you'd tried to silence her? Did she spend the next 3 years gathering evidence against you, tracking your movements, waiting for the moment to bring you down? Rebecca's hand tightened around the syringe, her confidence visibly shaken. You're bluffing. Am I? Andrew took another small step forward. She told me everything, Rebecca, about Diane and her son in Chicago, about how you arranged the accident that killed my family, about the network you and Richard built to identify and target vulnerable women. Richard's grip on Lily loosened slightly, his attention now fixed on Andrew, uncertainty plain on his face. Rebecca, he said, his voice strained, what is he talking about? You said the Morgan accident was a coincidence, an opportunity we exploited afterward. You never said you arranged it? Rebecca shot him a venomous glance. Shut up, Richard. But the damage was done. Andrew saw the opening, the fracture in their alliance, widening. He pressed harder. She's been lying to you from the beginning, Richard. Using you as her cleanup man, her legal front. But she keeps the real prizes for herself. How much of the money from the previous victims did she actually share with you? Richard's face paled, his eyes darting to Rebecca, with new suspicion. Is that true? Did you arrange the Morgan accident? It doesn't matter now, Rebecca snapped, raising the syringe. What matters is finishing this. Hold the girl. But Richard's grip had slackened further, his attention divided between Rebecca and Andrew. Lily, sensing the shift, suddenly twisted free, ducking under his arm and running toward Andrew. Lily! Andrew shouted. Down! The child dropped instantly to the floor, as Andrew had taught her during their days at the country house, a safety drill she had practiced diligently. In the same motion, Andrew pulled the gun from his pocket and leveled it at Rebecca. It's over, he said, his voice deadly calm. Drop the syringe. Rebecca froze, her eyes darting between the gun and Lily's prone form on the concrete floor. For a moment, the warehouse hung suspended in a tableau of tension, no one moving, barely breathing. Then Rebecca lunged, not toward Andrew, but toward Lily, the syringe raised like a dagger. Andrew fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, echoing off the walls, reverberating through the cavernous building. Rebecca staggered, the syringe clattering to the floor as her hand flew to her shoulder, where blood now blossomed through her expensive coat. You shot me! She gasped, more shocked than pained. You actually shot me! Andrew kept the gun trained on her, his hand steady. Stay down. Don't move. Rebecca stared at him, her face contorted with rage and disbelief. You were supposed to be broken, she snarled. Vulnerable. Easy prey. You made one critical mistake, Andrew said quietly. You gave me something to live for again. Richard, seeing the turn of events, had backed away, hands raised in surrender. I didn't know, he babbled. About your family, about the children. I swear I didn't know she was killing them. Save it for the police, Andrew replied, not taking his eyes off Rebecca. Lily had crawled to Andrew's side, pressing against his leg, her small body trembling, but her face set with determination. You came for me, she whispered, looking up at him with absolute trust. Just like you promised. Always, Andrew replied, his free hand briefly touching her head in reassurance. The warehouse doors burst open, light flooding the space, as Alexandra Dave and the security team rushed in. Followed moments later by police officers Jessica had alerted despite Andrew's initial objections. In the chaos that followed, as Rebecca and Richard were restrained and arrested as statements were taken and evidence secured, Andrew never let go of Lily's hand. She clung to him like a lifeline, watching with solemn eyes as the woman who had tormented her was led away in handcuffs. Is it over? Lily asked as a paramedic checked her for injuries, the bruise on her cheek already turning purple against her pale skin. Andrew knelt beside her, meeting her gaze directly. Yes, sweetheart, it's over. She can never hurt you again. Lily studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she threw her arms around his neck, burying her face against his shoulder. Andrew held her close, his heart aching with a fierce protectiveness he had thought lost forever after Sophie's death. Let's go home, he whispered against her hair. To the country house, Lily asked, her voice muffled against his coat. Andrew hesitated, then shook his head. No, I think it's time for a new home, one that belongs to both of us, where we can start fresh. Lily pulled back slightly, looking into his face with cautious hope. Together, like a real family. Like a real family, Andrew confirmed, his voice rough with emotion. If that's what you want. Lily's smile, small but genuine, was answer enough. The legal proceedings that followed were exhaustive but conclusive. Rebecca Shaw, exposed as serial killer Regina Simmons, faced multiple charges of murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, fraud, and child endangerment. Richard Payne, in exchange for a reduced sentence, provided evidence that implicated her in no fewer than 5 deaths, including Elizabeth Collins and the driver of the car that had killed Elena and Sophie Morgan. The investigation uncovered a methodical pattern of targeting isolation and elimination that had spanned over a decade. Rebecca's psychological evaluations revealed a woman consumed by envy and resentment, fixated on acquiring the lives and fortunes of women she perceived as more fortunate than herself. Throughout the hearings, Andrew remained a steady presence, his testimony measured and precise. When asked why he had gone alone to the warehouse that night, he answered simply, "She had my daughter. There was no choice to make." His use of the word daughter was deliberate, a public declaration of his intentions. The adoption proceedings began even before Rebecca's trial concluded, supported by testimonials from Jessica Alexandra Doctor Martinez and, most surprisingly, Emily Parker, who had emerged from hiding to provide crucial evidence linking Rebecca to multiple crimes. Emily's relationship with Andrew remained complicated, the weight of their shared past and mutual grief creating both connection and distance. But in Lily, they found common ground, a reason to move beyond blame and recrimination. 6 months after that terrible night in the warehouse, Andrew stood in the doorway of Lily's new bedroom in their home in the suburbs of Boston. The room was a warm yellow, the walls decorated with her drawings and photographs, the bookshelves filled with volumes both old and new. On her bed sat both Hoppy the rabbit and Sophie's elephant guardians of her dreams. Lily sat at a small desk by the window, carefully writing in a journal Dr. Martinez had suggested as part of her therapy. She looked up as Andrew entered, her smile now coming easily, the shadows in her eyes gradually fading with each passing day. "Ready for your piano lesson?" Andrew asked, returning her smile. Lily nodded eagerly, closing her journal. In the months since her rescue, she had thrown herself into music with passion and dedication, her natural talent flourishing under the guidance of a patient teacher. The piano in the living room, once silent for years after Elena's death, now filled the house with melody and life. They drove to the music school together, Lily chattering about a new piece she was learning, her excitement palpable. Andrew listened, marveling at her resilience, her capacity for joy despite all she had endured. Children, he had discovered, possessed a remarkable ability to heal when given safety, stability, and love. The lesson went well, Lily's teacher praising her progress with genuine enthusiasm. Afterward, they stopped for ice cream, a weekly tradition they had established. "Andrew," Lily said, as they sat at a small table, her expression suddenly serious, "when will the judge say yes about the adoption?" Andrew set down his spoon, giving her question the attention it deserved. "The final hearing is next week. All the reports are positive. There's every reason to believe the judge will approve it." Lily nodded, processing this information. "And then you'll really be my dad legally." "Yes, but Lily, you should know something." Andrew leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Whether the papers say it or not, you are already my daughter in every way that matters. No judge can change that." Lily's eyes filled with tears that didn't fall, her small face solemn with emotion, too big for her 7 years. "I wish Mom could know that I'm okay now, that I found you." Andrew reached across the table, taking her small hand in his. "I believe she does know, sweetheart, somehow." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Andrew sat in the living room with a glass of whiskey, staring at the photograph on the mantel. It showed Elena and Sophie on the beach, laughing into the camera, their hair blowing in the wind, their eyes bright with joy. Beside it now stood a new photograph, Lily at her first recital, seated at the piano, her face a study in concentration and happiness. The doorbell rang, surprising him. Andrew checked his watch, frowning at the late hour, then moved cautiously to the front door. Old habits died hard, vigilance now second nature after all that had happened. Through the peephole, he saw Emily standing on the porch, her posture tense, her expression uncertain. Andrew opened the door. "Emily," he said, genuine but cautious welcome in his voice. "Is everything all right?" She nodded, then shook her head, a rueful smile crossing her face. "I don't know. I've found something I thought you should have." From her bag, she withdrew a small box, offering it with hesitant hands. "It was Elena's from when we were girls. I kept it after the accident. But it should be yours now. Yours and Lily's." Andrew accepted the box, opening it carefully. Inside lay a silver locket on a delicate chain, its surface engraved with intricate patterns. When he pressed the small clasp, it opened to reveal a miniature photograph of a young Elena with her sister, their smiles mirroring each other, their arms wrapped around each other's shoulders. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "This means a great deal." Emily nodded, looking past him into the house. "Is she asleep?" "Yes, but you're welcome to come in." Emily hesitated, then stepped inside. They moved to the living room, the silence between them not comfortable, but no longer hostile. "The final hearing is next week," Andrew said, setting the locket box carefully on the coffee table. "I know, Jessica told me." Emily paused, staring at the photographs on the mantel. "She's doing well, Lily. Very well. She's resilient, stronger than anyone her age should have to be." Emily nodded, her gaze still fixed on the photographs. "She looks happy in the recital picture." "She is, most of the time." Andrew studied Emily's profile, so like and unlike his wife's. "You could be part of her life, you know, if you wanted. She should have family beyond just me." Emily turned to him, then her expression complicated with grief and tentative hope. "I'd like that, if you're sure." "I'm sure. Lily needs all the love she can get." They talked for another hour, finding their way through the minefield of their shared history, towards something that might eventually resemble forgiveness. When Emily finally left, there was a fragile peace between them, a foundation upon which something stronger might eventually be built. The day of the final adoption hearing dawned, clear and bright autumn sunlight filtering through the changing leaves. Andrew and Lily dressed carefully, he in a suit, she in the blue dress she had chosen specifically for the occasion. "Nervous?" he asked as they stood in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting his tie. Lily smoothed her dress, her expression solemn. "A little. What if the judge says no?" Andrew knelt to her level, looking directly into her eyes. "Then we appeal. We try again. We never give up. But Lily, all the signs are positive. There's every reason to believe today is the day our family becomes official." She nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. "I have something for you," she said, suddenly reaching into her pocket. "For after the hearing, when it's real." She pressed a small object into his palm, a handmade bracelet of woven threads, blue and green intertwined. "I made it in art therapy," she explained. "Blue for you, green for me. Miss Sarah helped me. She said fathers sometimes wear things their children make." Andrew closed his fingers gently around the bracelet, his throat suddenly tight with emotion. "It's perfect," he managed. "I'll wear it always." The courtroom was formal, but not intimidating the judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, and a reputation for thoughtfulness in family court matters. Jessica, Alexandra, Dr. Martinez, and Emily sat in the gallery, a small but powerful support system. When the judge called Lily forward to speak privately, Andrew felt a moment of anxiety. But Lily walked to the bench with steady steps, her back straight, her voice clear as she answered the judge's questions. When she returned to Andrew's side, she slipped her hand into his, giving him a small, confident nod. And in that moment, regardless of the legal outcome, Andrew knew they were already a family. The judge's decision, when it came, was unequivocal. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimonials, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. From this day forward, Lily Collins shall be legally recognized as Lily Morgan, with all rights and privileges thereto." The formal language couldn't diminish the power of the moment. Lily's hand tightened in Andrew's as the judge continued. "Mr. Morgan, your commitment to this child's welfare has been demonstrated beyond question. The court recognizes and affirms the family bond you have already established." Outside the courthouse, standing in the autumn sunshine, they were surrounded by well-wishers. Jessica hugged Lily tightly, whispering something in her ear that made the child smile. Alexandra clasped Andrew's shoulder, her professional demeanor momentarily softened by genuine emotion. Dr. Martinez presented Lily with a small gift, a journal with her new name embossed on the cover. Emily hung back slightly still, uncertain of her place in this new family constellation. But when Lily approached, her arms outstretched for a hug, Emily's hesitation dissolved. She embraced the child who would have been her niece by marriage, this living connection to the sister she had lost. That evening, Andrew and Lily celebrated with a small gathering at their home. There was cake and music, laughter, and a few tears. Lily played the piano for their guests, her performance confident and joyful. As the notes filled the house, Andrew watched her, his heart full. After everyone had gone, after Lily had been tucked into bed with both Hoppy and the elephant standing guard, Andrew sat on the edge of her bed, the silver locket in his hand. "I have something for you," he said, opening the clasp to show her. "It belonged to my wife Elena. Her sister Emily gave it to me for you." Lily touched the locket with reverent fingers. "It's beautiful." "I've had it modified," Andrew explained, opening it to reveal the photographs inside. On one side was the original picture of Elena and Emily as girls. On the other was a new photograph of Lily and Andrew taken at her piano recital, both of them smiling. "This way," he said softly, "you can keep both your families close to your heart, your mother and us." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was radiant. "Can you put it on me?" Andrew fastened the delicate chain around her neck, the locket settling against her heart. Lily touched it once more, then looked up at him, her expression solemn. "I love you, Dad." She said the word still new on her tongue, but spoken with absolute certainty. Andrew swallowed hard, his own eyes burning. "I love you too, Lily, more than you'll ever know." Later, standing in the doorway, watching her sleep, the locket gleaming softly in the nightlight's glow, Andrew reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that snowy night at the Christmas market to this peaceful evening, from strangers to father and daughter, from loss to love. Rebecca Shaw had intended to destroy him to exploit his grief and loneliness for her own ends. Instead, she had inadvertently given him the greatest gift, a second chance at fatherhood, at family, at a life filled with purpose and joy. Outside, the autumn wind stirred the leaves, whispering of change and renewal. Inside, a child slept peacefully secure in the knowledge that she was safe, that she was wanted, that she was home. And in the space between those two realities, Andrew Morgan stood guard, the bracelet of blue and green threads encircling his wrist, a silent promise made visible. A true father at last. 1 year later, on a crisp December evening, snow fell gently over Boston. The Morgan home glowed with warmth and light Christmas decorations, adorning the porch, a tree visible through the front window. Inside, music and laughter filled the rooms as friends gathered to celebrate. Lily, now 8, moved confidently among the guests, her growth over the past year visible in more than just her height. The shadows had faded from her eyes, replaced by a bright intelligence and quiet strength. She wore a red dress for the occasion, the silver locket gleaming at her throat. Andrew watched from the kitchen doorway as she demonstrated a complicated piano piece for Dr. Martinez, her small fingers dancing over the keys with growing skill. Pride swelled in his chest, not just for her musical talent, but for her resilience, her capacity for joy after such darkness. Emily appeared beside him, offering a glass of wine. Their relationship had evolved over the months, the sharp edges of grief and blame gradually worn smooth by their shared commitment to Lily's well-being. They would never be close the way she and Elena had been, but they had found a kind of peace. "She's remarkable," Emily said, watching Lily. "Elena would have loved her." Andrew nodded, accepting the wine. Yes, she would have. They stood in companionable silence, the past a presence between them but no longer a barrier. Alexandra joined them, elegant as always, in a simple black dress. "The prosecutor called today," she said quietly. "Rebecca's final appeal was denied. She'll serve her consecutive life sentences as ordered." Andrew absorbed this information with a nod. Rebecca Shaw had faded in importance as the months passed, her power to frighten diminished by distance and time. She existed now primarily as a cautionary tale, a shadow they had escaped. "And Richard," he asked, "serving his reduced sentence for his testimony. He'll be eligible for parole in 15 years. Alexandra's expression hardened slightly, though I doubt any parole board will look favorably on his case, regardless of his cooperation. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as Jessica arrived with her husband, followed by Dave Peterson and his wife. The small circle of people who had stood with them through the darkest days now gathered to celebrate how far they had come. Dinner was served, glasses raised in toast, stories shared, and memories created. As the evening progressed, Lily asked permission to give her gift to Andrew early, too excited to wait until Christmas morning. At his nod, she retrieved a carefully wrapped package from beneath the tree. Andrew unwrapped it slowly, savoring her anticipation. Inside was a handmade book, its cover decorated with photographs and drawings. The Story of Us, read the title in Lily's careful handwriting. He opened it to find a child's perspective on their journey together from that first meeting at the Christmas market through the adoption and beyond. Each page contained a memory illustrated with Lily's increasingly skilled drawings, annotated in her distinctive script. The final page held a photograph taken on Adoption Day, Andrew and Lily standing on the courthouse steps, their faces alight with joy. Beneath it, Lily had written, "Families are made in many ways. Ours was made by choosing each other." Andrew looked up from the book to find Lily watching him, anxiously waiting for his reaction. He opened his arms and she flew into them, her small body warm and solid against his chest. "It's the best gift I've ever received," he said against her hair. "Thank you, sweetheart." Later, after the guests had departed and Lily had gone to bed, Andrew sat in the living room, the memory book open on his lap. He traced the words on the final page, marveling at the wisdom in them. Families are made in many ways. Ours was made by choosing each other. From the hall closet, he retrieved a small wrapped box he had been saving for Christmas morning. Opening it carefully, he looked once more at the contents: adoption papers for a second child, a 7-year-old boy named Michael, currently in foster care after losing his parents in a car accident. A child who, like Lily, needed a home, a family, a father. Andrew had met Michael during a volunteer event at Lily's school, had recognized in the boy's quiet resignation the same pain he had once seen in Lily's eyes. The decision to expand their family had come naturally with Lily's enthusiastic support. Tomorrow he would tell her about Michael, about the possibility of a brother if the boy wished to join their family. Another choice, another chance to create belonging from loss. Outside snow continued to fall, transforming the world into something pure and new. Inside, a father kept watch, grateful beyond words for the journey that had brought him here to this moment, to this life rebuilt from ashes. In the quiet of the Christmas Eve, Andrew Morgan made a silent toast to those who had shaped his path to Elena and Sophie, forever loved and remembered. To Elizabeth Collins, whose daughter had become his own. To the friends who had stood beside him in his darkest hour. And most of all, to Lily, the child who had saved him as surely as he had saved her. Through the trial of fire, they had emerged stronger, their bonds tempered by adversity, their love deepened by shared survival. The past would always be part of them, its lessons carried forward, its losses honored. But it no longer defined them. What defined them now was choice, the daily choice to love, to protect, to forgive, to grow. The choice they had made to become a family against all odds, despite all obstacles. In the end, that was what made Andrew Morgan a true father. Not blood, not law, not circumstance, but choice. The choice to stand between a child and harm. The choice to rebuild a life shattered by loss. The choice to open his heart again, knowing the risk, embracing it anyway. As midnight approached, Andrew closed the memory book and set it carefully on the mantel beside the family photographs. Then he moved quietly upstairs to check on Lily once more before retiring. She slept peacefully. Hoppy tucked beneath one arm, the locket still around her neck. In sleep, her face held echoes of the frightened child he had first encountered, but also the confident, joyful girl she was becoming. Both versions precious, both worthy of protection and love. "Good night, my daughter," Andrew whispered gently, closing her door. In the morning, they would begin the next chapter of their story, together as they had promised each other on that snowy night that seemed both yesterday and a lifetime ago. Together as family.